Welcome back, guys. This is EBA 101 Boxing, and today we're going to review or predict the fight for between Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. I'm calling this the 20-year-old fight because this fight should have happened over 20 years ago. Both fighters now are over the age of 50, and this is an enticing fight because at their prime there were two dominant fighters, and maybe pound for pound, I think Roy Jones might have been higher in my opinion, just because he was able to move up in weight classes, right? But Mike Tyson himself, he was like 5'10", 5'11", knocking out people who were 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", so he was always on the lighter side of the heavyweight in the beginning, so 215, 220, to maybe 230 later in his career. This fight is two older people there. I know it's going to be an exhibition. Maybe it's going to be postponed a little bit because all this things with the quarantine. But the main component is Roy Jones Jr. He was a boxer who tended to, use a lot of his reflexes for his speed and be able to get in and out. He would fight a lot of the times with his hands down, and he was able to maneuver, dodge, and slip some punches, and do the counter right, and get people in awkward positions or off balance, where he was able to get a lot of his knockdowns. He was very dominant. Then he went up to heavyweight for one fight where he fought versus Ruiz, and he beat him, and that was his only fight. He came back down, he got knocked out, and he never was the same after that. He kept fighting just till a couple years back. He was still fighting, and he's been knocked out a couple of times. And this is the big issue I see in this fight, because Roy Jones has been knocked out by many people, and because he doesn't have his reflexes anymore. He didn't have the fundamental skills as a lot of the boxers. If you look at Mike Tyson, he's still, in what I'm hearing in interviews, he's still fundamentally sound on the technique that he's using. It just, with Mike Tyson in his prime, he still was, his biggest weakness was his stamina, right? He was so used to fighting people for 4 or 5 rounds, and then when he would take him to the later rounds, he would get tired. And yes, a lot of the drugs and alcohol or the partying uh, started in to affect his stamina, maybe, and at that point, but we can only go based on what we saw in the later fights. He always had that power, and someone with that type of power against Roy Jones Jr., I feel back then it would have been a little bit more competitive if Roy Jones was able to dodge and move and around. But I think Mike Tyson was still fast and was able to punch really hard, so he would probably go to the body, slow him down. And now that Roy Jones doesn't have his legs, which would make his biggest chances of winning is moving around the ring and trying to, just out jab Mike Tyson. He is 51 years old, I believe. He's not gonna have that legs, I think, and that's what later in his career, when he was fighting in his 40s, still he didn't move as fast. He didn't move around too much, and he was being caught a lot. I remember him fighting a lot, putting heads up, and just trying to survive some of the rounds. But Mike Tyson has a little bit less wear and tear. He does look explosive, but and looks very good in the videos I've seen. But that's just very short term, right? But if he can do that for I think it's 8 rounds, that would be really interesting. I don't know if they're gonna go all 100% like they're mentioning. I think it's gonna be no headgear, but bigger gloves, and I think Mike Tyson will take this fight. I just think that Roy Jones has been through many wars, and he's a warrior, and he always gonna love boxing. But I think just because Mike Tyson still has that power, because power is the last thing to go. Like Josh Foreman, he came back when he was pretty old, and he was able to knock out some heavyweights. So I believe that Mike Tyson will knock out Roy Jones if it would be a real fight. But in this case, it might just go to decision, and in that case, I still think Mike Tyson will be doing enough in those short bursts where he will look a lot more dominant, or just seem to hurt more Roy Jones. I don't know if Roy Jones has anything in his punches to put Mike Tyson back. And with that guys, see you guys.